Brightbill slowly waddled into the nest. He had a confused look on his face. "Mama, the other goslings said we have to leave the island soon, and we won't return for months and months. Is that true?" "That is true," said Roz. "You know that geese migrate south for the winter." "Will you migrate with us?" said Brightbill. "I cannot fly, I cannot swim, so I will spend the winter here on the island." "Can I stay with you?" "I don't think that's a good idea. I think you should migrate with the flock." "How long will the migration take?" said Brightbill. "Where will we fly? When will we come home?" "I do not know," said Roz. "Let us go ask the others." "Hello, everyone," said Roz. "Brightbill has some questions about the flock's upcoming winter migration." "What would you like to know, little one?" said Loudwing. "How long will the migration take?" said Brightbill. "Where will we fly? When will we come back?" "It'll take us a couple weeks to fly south," said Loudwing, "depending on the weather." Another goose said, "We'll join other flocks at a beautiful lake in the middle of a great, sprawling field." "And we'll come back to the island after 4 or 5 months," said someone else, "depending on the weather." As they walked back to the nest, Brightbill said to his mother, "Lately, I've been feeling this strong urge to fly, not just around the pond or the island, but to go on a long flight, a journey." "Those are your instincts," said the robot. "All animals have instincts. They help you survive." "Do you have instincts?" said the gosling. "I do have instincts. They help me survive as well." "My instincts are definitely telling me to fly south for the winter. I just wish you could join us. I'm going to worry about you while I'm away." "Do not worry. I will be fine," said Roz. "How bad could winter be?" It was the night before the migration, and Brightbill was sleeping fitfully. Roz watched him toss and turn until he finally crawled up into her arms, and she rocked him to sleep just like the old days. Early the next morning, Brightbill waddled outside and looked at the pond, and the water was perfectly still. "So, today's the day, huh?" said Chit-Chat, perched on a branch. You're going to see so many new things and meet so many new animals, and if there were any squirrels at your wintering gals, please tell them that Chit-Chat says hello." "Today's the day," said Brightbill. "The flock will be leaving soon. Are you excited or nervous or scared?" "Oh gosh, I'm all those things." The squirrel whispered, "Well, don't worry about your mother. I'll look after her, so she'll be perfectly fine." Brightbill smiled. "I'm afraid it is time to go," said Roz as she stepped out of the nest. "Okay, Mama," said the gosling. "See you in spring, Chit-Chat." "Have a nice migration, Brightbill." The squirrel scampered back into the treetops. "Come home with lots of exciting stories, but not too exciting because I don't want anything scary to happen to see you. Okay, goodbye." The geese were honking with excitement and hustling around as they made their final preparations. Several of the fathers huddled together, discussing their flight plans, while the mothers looked and took the head count. "There you are," Brightbill Loudwing honked in the middle of the crowd. "We're about to begin." "May I have your attention, please?" said the biggest goose. "As most of you know, my name is Longneck, and I'll be leading this year's migration. I'm asking everyone to please join your families for takeoff. Once we're all airborne, each family will take its position in our V formation, and we'll start the first leg of our journey. Are there any questions?" "I have a question," came a booming voice. "My son will not have a family to be with. Where does he fit into the formation?" Everyone turned to Longneck. "He can fly with me," said the big goose. "I hear Brightbill is a very clever flyer. I could use his help at the point." A moment later, the geese began flapping and honking and making their way into the air. A cloud of feathers floated down around the robot and her son. "You are not a gosling any more," said Roz. "I am proud of the fine young goose that you have become." Brightbill fluttered up to his mother's shoulder. "Thanks, Mama." The young goose wiped his eyes. "Is this where we say goodbye?" "This is where we say goodbye for now. Spring will be here soon, and we will be together again." "I am going to miss you," said Brightbill as he nuzzled his mother. "I'm going to miss you too," said Roz as she nuzzled her son. The goose took a deep breath. Then he shook his tail feathers, flapped his wings, and joined the flock. At first, the geese flew in a disorganized jumble, but each goose slowly drifted into position until the flock formed a wobbly V. At the lead was Longneck, and behind his left wing was Brightbill. They circled in the sky until the V pointed south, and then the geese began their long migration. Roz climbed to the top of the tree and watched as the flock slowly faded into the horizon. The island was quiet. The migratory birds had all left. The hibernators were asleep, and everyone else had begun their simple winter routines. Everyone but Roz. Now that she was alone, our robot didn't know what to do with herself. Roz stood there until the snowflakes started drifting down from the sky. The flakes swirled in the breeze and slowly piled up on the ground and on the trees and on the robot. So she crouched into the nest, slid the stone door behind her, and sat in darkness. Hours, days, weeks went by without the robot moving. She had no need to move. She felt perfectly safe in the nest. And so, in her own way, the robot hibernated. Her body relaxed. Her quiet, whirring slowly stopped. Her eyes faded to black. She probably could have spent centuries like that, hibernating in total darkness. But the robot's hibernation was suddenly interrupted when a shaft of light fell upon her face and carried the energy back to her empty battery. Roz's body tensed. Her quiet whirring slowly started. "Hello, I am Rosm Unit 7134, but you may call me Roz," the robot said automatically. When all of her systems were up and running again, Roz noticed she was surrounded by broken branches and piles of snow. The roof of the nest had caved in, and the lodge was now flooded with sunlight. Roz felt more energized with each passing minute, but she also felt cold. Her joints felt stiff and brittle, and her thinking was slow. So she got up, cleared the spot, and made a fire. The snow inside the nest began to melt, and the robot's sensors began to thaw. And when she was ready, she climbed out through the hole of the roof and into the bright, foreign landscape. The world Roz had known was now covered in a thick layer of snow. Tree limbs bent to the ground under heavy sleeves. The dark pond was now pure white. The only sound was Roz's crunching footsteps. She took a few steps and plunged a hand into a lump of snow and pulled out a long stick. She took a few more steps and picked up a fallen tree. She hacked it to smaller pieces and flung them back as well. Then she reached down another snowy shape. But what she pulled out was not a piece of wood. It was Dart the Weasel. He was frozen solid. Roz stared at this stiff body for a moment and decided it was best to leave the poor thing where he was. As the robot continuing gathered wood, she found more victims of the cold. A frozen mouse, a frozen bird, a frozen deer. Had all the animals on the island frozen to death? No, not all. There were a few fresh tracks in the snow. As we know, the wilderness is filled with beauty, but it's also filled with ugliness, and that winter was ugly. A devastating cold front had swept through the north and brought dangerous temperatures and huge amounts of snow. The animals had prepared for winter, but nothing could have prepared the weaker ones for the long nights when the temperature plummeted and the wind whipped over the island. Roz returned to the nest. She patched the hole, but another snowfall might cave in the nest all over again, so Roz decided to keep a fire going day and night to prevent snow from building up on the roof. The robot brought in load after load of firewood. Each time she went outside, she was reminded of the frozen weasel and mouse and deer. How many other frozen animals were hidden beneath the snow? Before going in for the night, she called out to whoever was listening. "Animals of the island, you do not need to freeze. Join me in my lodge where it is safe and warm." Firelight spilled out from the nest into the cold, blustery night. Roz sat inside and listened to the wind and to the soft pops and crackles of the burning wood. And then the robot's keen hearing picked up another sound, tiny footsteps crunching through the snow. "Roz, I'm freezing. Can I join you by the fire, please?" said a weak voice. Into the light crawled Chit-Chat. The squirrel was shivering, and clumps of ice stuck to her fur. When she finally felt the heat of the fire, she collapsed. Roz picked her up off the floor and gently placed her on a warm stone and let her sleep. An hour later, there were more footsteps, and a family of hares shuffled into the nest. They huddled together in a corner without saying a word. Pinktail, the possum, was the next to arrive. "Good morning," she mumbled, acting all cheerful. "It certainly has been chilly." Swooper the owl hopped in, and then Fink, and then Digdown. The fuzzy bandits carried in an old turtle. Creatures should have all been hibernating deep underground and been roused by this vicious weather. Only the healthiest animals with the warmest homes were safe. More and more weary animals appeared, and slowly the lodge filled up. This was the first time many of the lodgers had seen fire, and they gazed at it with a mixture of fear and hope. It was important that the lodgers understand fire, so Roz showed them how to build one. She showed the smaller animals how to arrange the kindling, and she showed the bigger animals how to arrange the logs. Bumpkin, Lumpkin, and Rumpkin stuck the firestones together, and everyone cheered when they finally managed to spark. As Roz looked around, she saw moles curling up beside the owl, a mouse nudged between two weasels, hares nestling with a badger. Never before had the robot seen prey and predator so close and so peaceful. But how long could that peace possibly last? "I propose a truce," said Roz. "Like the dawn truce, everyone must agree not to hunt or harm another one while in my lodge." "Very well," said Swooper, after consulting his carnivorous friends. "We hunters will control ourselves." "Then it is settled. My home is a safe place for all." One by one, the lodgers each fell into a deep sleep. "You are all welcome to stay here as long as you like," said the robot, as the animals rubbed sleep from their eyes. "My home is your home." "Thanks a lot, Roz." Fink carefully stepped over a hare and a woodpecker on his way out the door. "I don't think I would have survived another night on my own. It's just too bad we can't cram a few more creatures in here." And the fox slipped outside. The robot looked down at the fur and the feathers that now carpeted the floor. The nest had been completely full that night. If any more animals showed up, they'd be left out in the cold. But Roz was not about to let that happen. A second lodge would have to be bigger than the first if it was going to fit Broadfoot, the bull moose. He was a towering hulk of an animal and had a thick coat of fur, but even he was struggling with the frigid temperatures. Broadfoot lived on the other side of the pond in a dense section of forest that was home to many animals, many of whom were desperate. The winter days were short, so there was no time to waste. Rather than walking all the way around the pond, Roz tested the frozen surface to see if it was safe. Then she carefully walked over the ice into the forest on the other side. The moose quietly led the robot into the clearing of the trees where the new lodge would go. Then Roz made a fire and watched the cold creatures begin crawling out from the shadows. "Don't worry," the robot says. "You'll all be warm soon, but I need your help." Roz asked the animals to collect anything useful they could find: large stones, strong branches, chunks of frozen mud. With the robot's building expertise and the small army of helpers, construction of the second lodge didn't take long. The animals happily agreed to the robot's truce, and they shuffled into the warm wooden dome. "If you keep the fire alive, it will keep you alive," explained Roz as she dropped another log into the flames. "But be careful. Fire can turn deadly in an instant." At dawn, heavy snow was falling again, and there was Roz setting out from the nest to build a third lodge. She trudged into the great meadow where fierce winds had created enormous sweeping snowdrifts. But she powered through and finished the job, and was soon beginning work on a fourth lodge, and then a fifth. The island became dotted with lodges that all glowed warmly through those long winter nights, and inside each one, animals laughed and shared stories and cheered their good friend Roz. Strange sounds were echoing from the far side of the pond. What started as a low murmur gradually swelled to a chorus of terrified voices. There was an eerie glow in that part of the forest, and a thick plume of smoke began rising up from the snowy treetops. Roz charged across the ice and found the second lodge completely engulfed in a raged fire. Frightened animals were running in every direction, fleeing for their lives. "What happened?" shouted Roz, as Broadfoot galloped wildly past. "We put too many logs in the fire pit," he said without stopping. The flames climbed to the ceilings. "My baby is still in there," cried a mother, pointing at the burning lodge. "Somebody help, please." Roz didn't hesitate. She plowed through the snow and ducked into the lodge. Flames and smoke were everywhere. A tall stack of logs blazed on the fire pit, and in the far corner a tiny ball of fur was shaking with fear. Crouching low, the robot wound her way beneath the smoke and found the flames, gently scooped up the young hare. "Do not worry," Roz yelled over the roar of the fire. "You are going to be okay." She turned to leave, but the doorway had started to crumble, so she shielded the hare with her body and smashed right through the wall of the lodge. Sizzling pieces of wood went flying as the robot and the hare burst out into the soft snow. "Oh, darling, you're all right. Thank you for saving my baby," Roz cried the mother. Now that everyone was safely away, the robot turned her attention to putting out the fire. Her glowing eyes darted around as she computed a plan. Then, with all the strength of her legs, Roz launched herself high on the snowy branches of the nearest pine tree. A moment later, the tree was shaking violently, and heaps of snow were sliding from the branches and pouring onto the flames like an avalanche. Steam hissed through the smothering mound of snow. Flames quickly died. The snow quickly melted, and within minutes, all that remained was a charred foundation of a lodge. Roz dropped down from the tree and waited as the frightened animals slowly returned. Then she said to them, "Would you like another lodge?" The animals looked at one another, unsure of what to do. Understandably, they were afraid of what another fire might do if it broke out, but they were far more afraid of the deadly cold. So they pulled together and worked with Roz and built a bigger, better lodge on top of the old one. It had a taller ceiling and a deeper fire pit, and it was made with more rock and less wood, and it had a supply of water for emergencies. But the most important safety feature of all, this rebuilt lodge, were the lodgers themselves, who now had a whole new respect for fire.